and you, hey, this is, this was sponsored by this organization. You got to snowball it that way.
The students at Missouri State who do Skeptic each year are a wonderful example. They're in the middle of the Bible Belt. They put on a free conference, like free, and they get enough funding to bring in. Last year I was there with DJ Grothy, with Vic Stenger, good old Vic, Joe Nickel, just a really wonderful group of people, and yeah, absolutely free. And they do it by hard work, by sticking it to the school and insisting that this is needed, that the community wants it, and that pays off because it was a packed audience.
Yeah, we've got 100 members in our organization, and a couple of dozen active, eager members who are all saying, we want to do things, but we don't really have a lot of, we do a lot of events, but we don't have enough to get everybody that seems to be active and involved. One of the things we're kind of trying to think about is how could we get into like the high school system or the public school system here in some kind of a context of getting enthusiasm about science or about critical thinking, enthusiasm about these things into kids that are in the high schools. Have you guys done anything at all with kind of getting you're just promoting? I know you guys promote science news a lot and science education. You guys do a lot of coverage of stuff that's going on in different school boards around the country. Have you ever been able to get actively involved with any local school district to say, like, we want to get in and help influence what's going on ourselves, not just in policy, but we'd like to offer ourselves or people we know as a resource to local schools to help these issues that I think we can all agree the education about science and critical thinking isn't really cutting it right now.
Maybe Evan, you can talk about 5 by 5. I mean, that certainly fills a need.
Oh, it sure does. I mean, our other podcast, our companion podcast, 5 by 5, is a 5-minute podcast in which we focus on one skeptical subject, and it's used quite often in classroom settings. It's the perfect little focus for any given science class, philosophy class, and so forth.
Yeah, we optimize it for the classroom.
Absolutely, definitely. So yeah, we've found sort of a niche in providing that for classes.
But you're talking about something a lot more specific. I mean,
specific for us because we're a group of students. We're all students. There's a broad range. We've got a 15-year-old film student. We've got a lot of 18 to 20-year-old undergrads, and we've got a lot of grad students that are married and have a house and and have moved on. But we're all students and all interested in education on some level.
But what you described is that's high-end activism. I mean, you want to go into a school district. You want to petition the school board of that town to, whether it's a policy change or you want to actually...
the school board or even just a local teacher or a local, a local administrator, even on that level of just a teacher has a lot of freedom to bring in resources that they see. And even if we can't say, we're going to get a lot of pull, this student organization of 100 so far, we're not going to get a lot of pull with the school board for, Las Vegas or Clark County School District. But we all know teachers. We have probably 4 dozen teachers in the district, high school teachers, that we know that we could potentially give and help with resources.
Well, that's why I brought up 5 by 5, because the nice thing about having a podcast that has a huge listener base is that we get people actively writing into us and saying things like, I'm a teacher, help me. And, our full podcast is way too long and way too adult for children, for teenagers even, in a classroom setting. And so, we don't have the time, unfortunately. That's just not what we do. We can't go school to school and say, let us help you, let us put on, talk to Richard Saunders about mystery investigators. They go school to school demonstrating science and debunking sort of techniques for kids. That's not us. We don't have time to do that. What we can do is what we do best, which is do podcasts. And so those are the resource that we provide.
Yeah, that's a good example of the fact that there's more to do than any one group can do. So find the thing that's not being done in your region and do it. Although, I would say what we have done as the Nest, if not as our podcast, is I think it was more than 10 years ago, we gave our first seminar to the Central Connecticut State University Science Teachers Program. So they're teaching teachers how to be science teachers. And we gave a seminar on critical thinking and skepticism, and it actually every 2 years I've given, because they have it's a 2-year program. So basically every class since then I've given basically the same seminar. So that's a good way just to get science teachers enthusiastic about skepticism and critical thinking, training those teachers who are then going to go out there and teach it. So that's an opportunity that was available to us, and that's what we did.
You'd be surprised at how this is new information to these science teachers, these professionals. They haven't had this exposure to a lot of these topics that we tackle regularly, and they're relatively grateful for. And
they love it, yeah. Oh, they love it. And they're also, teachers are happy to have you do their work for them, right? So if you provide a resource, and we get questions all the time. Hey, I'm a teacher. I want to teach critical thinking. What resources are there for the classroom? So we'll send them what resources are there, but there needs to be a lot more.
Yeah.
Right? And there's definitely room for people who want to be activists, who are looking for things to do where there's an unfilled need. Developing course material or projects or things that science teachers can download off the internet and use in the classroom. Again, we're doing a podcast, so that's what we do well, but there's lots of other kinds of resources they would like to have.
Drew, you should, if you're going to move forward with that type of activism, you should map out what you do and how you do it and what works, and then you should write a paper on that. And present it to the skeptical community and say, we didn't know what to do. We tried all these things. Yeah, I would make that the end goal of that project should be, this is how you can do it in other places,
And there have been teachers who have done papers at TAM about it. But every time we get that question, I always say, please start a blog collective like Skeptic. I would love to see something like Skeptic that's just all teachers blogging about their courses and exchanging ideas. And I don't see anything like that out there right now. And I think a big problem is just people don't have the time.
Right.
But seriously, anybody listening to this, the second you do this, tell me, and I will promote the hell out of it.
What about some of the big projects we've talked about in the past, like having a national or even multinational digital textbook repository for schools that they could go online and they could download course material, basically textbooks that are updated, to the day, to the minute, completely updated. You could avoid all this crazy creationism that they're trying to insert and banners and little stickers on books. You can get rid of all that and just download the science material that's been written by scientists that they can just download up to date, for very little cost. We talked about that. We don't have the time to do anything like that.
That's slowly evolving. That's happening.
It is.
People are doing it spontaneously and not in a systematic way.
It
so
needs
it's
a
just
push.
the
more people working on that, the better.
Yeah, it would be cool for a teacher, like a 7th grade teacher, to go and say, I'm a 7th grade science teacher. And these are the courses that I teach, and to be able to get course material for the year and help guide them.
It's on there, but again, it's not systematic.
It's there, but we're not the only groups that are doing that. Right. And you hear the Texas School Board, for instance, talked about what did they say, a 3-year goal of completely eliminating physical textbooks, and they were talking about it in the context of having textbooks that that talked about creationism, that gave intelligent design equal time. They were talking about eliminating. They just completely changed history in all their history courses. So we're not the only active organizations that are trying to do that. And in the same sense that it would make it easier for us to give those materials to teachers that wanted it, they have, the other teachers have the same access to.
That's always going to be the problem when you're talking about open access and free exchange of ideas. It's just something we're going to have to accept, is that our ideas are going to have to compete in a much more aggressive way with the crazy people's ideas.
Because it can't help for us to be the first one to do it. That would be ideal.
That brings up an interesting question, though. I think it was just a couple of weeks ago on a podcast you guys talked about how people respond to new information, whether they hear it from an official science source or whether they hear it